undeterred by being arrested 3 times in 6 months for tweets protesting about graft. Outspoken Zimbabwean journalist Hopewell Chin'ono has turned to song to get his message across. In a video that has since gone viral, Chin'ono has released a short freestyled reggae dance hall track titled Dem Loot, They Loot, in which he chastises rampant state corruption in the southern African country. The song has sparked a hashtag Dem Loot challenge on Twitter and prompted versions of other genres, including jazz and a cappella, using the country's traditional instrument. Let's take a listen to the original.
Lord have mercy, mercy, mercy. Daddy hoping at your party, party, party. Lord of them loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. Hospitals, no medication, dem loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. Ghetto youths, no jobs, you know, dem loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. No water to drink in townships, dem loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. Lord have mercy. Me sit up on top of the rhythm, sit up on top of the version. Crowd of people come out that them said that me a champion. When me come in, I did that me capture girls attention. When it come to me lyrics, there's no competition. Dem loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. They have no sense of purpose, dem loot. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. The elderly dying without medication. Dem loot, dem loot, dem loot. Lord mercy, hey. Looting is a problem in Zimbabwe.
Hopewell Chin'ono joins me on the line. Of course, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time, your poker face, and really trying to get a strong message across. What inspired this?
Good morning, and thank you for having me, Paul. I was inspired by the fact that the majority of our voters in Zimbabwe, the majority of the people whose future is being looted away by the corrupt political elites are the youth. And I've been trying to engage with them so that we can have a discussion about the consequences of this looting, the corruption, the plunder of the nation's natural resources. And I realized that I had to speak to them in a language that they were familiar with, using an art form that they were comfortable with. So last Sunday, when I was sitting where I'm sitting today, I just decided that let me do a freestyle reggae song, since reggae is very popular in Zimbabwe, and put it out and see what sort of conversation I can have with the youth. And I was pleasantly surprised that the whole thing went viral, and the youth are also doing their own versions of Dem Loot. But more importantly, we're having discussions about the very things that affect our life, which are driven by corruption. I'll give you a good example. The biggest hospital in Zimbabwe, called Harare Hospital or Salem Gabe Hospital, has only 2 maternity theaters. They were built in 1977 by Ian Smith. Only one of them is working at the moment. And yet we lose 2,500 women trying to give birth every year. That's the equivalent of 15 jumbo jets crashing. It's unacceptable. So that's why I decided that we need to have this conversation as a nation, not just as individuals in our own small spaces, but to make this a movement against the looting of public funds.
What does this now mean, Hopewell? I mean, you're a journalist, a resilient one that I've really got to commend you for the resilience that you've shown, being arrested 3 times in 6 months for tweets protesting about graft, and yet you don't give up, and you still believe that the message needs to be, heard and expressed and really just articulated in many forms. What does this mean for your future? Are you still a journalist turned rapper? What does it mean for you?
Well, I remain a journalist and documentary filmmaker. This was just a little something that I had to do in order to enhance and articulate the issues that I always talk about. I've always been talking about corruption. I unraveled a corrupt looting scandal last year, which resulted in the health minister being fired when they were looting a $60 million fund meant for COVID-19. But I realized that as a journalist, I don't have to rely mainly on the pen and the camera. I could also do other things, and that's why I did this song. And it was more of me being Hopewell, the citizen, than being the journalist. The journalistic part is just understanding the issues at hand and having the figures. Things are really bad in Zimbabwe. 95% of our potential workforce is out of work. Yet we are losing $100 million worth of gold being smuggled by political elites every month. Our central hospitals, all of them, they only need 50 million US dollars a year to run smoothly. Yet a budget for them worth 2 years is being looted every month by these political elites. So that's why I decided that I needed to do this. We have to do extra things in order to try and arrest graft. Otherwise, we are allowing the future of our children and grandkids to be looted by these self.
Now, you were released last week from a maximum security prison after 20 days on allegations of communicating all sorts of falsehoods. And, you know, looking at press freedom and freedom of speech in Zimbabwe, how far does the country have to stretch to be able to accommodate it? Because you've really had it hard, Hopewell.
We have regressed badly in terms of freedom of speech, in terms of freedom of the press, in terms of having our rights to protest, which are guaranteed in Zimbabwe's constitution. My latest arrest happened on the 8th of January. I was arrested for communicating falsehoods. The police, the Zimbabwean police, went to court and lied in court that I had tweeted about one of their officers beating up a child who died. I never tweeted that. They used a law that does not exist to charge me. And the magistrate surprisingly said there was overwhelming evidence and said the law was legitimate, which was an absolute joke. And in terms of freedom of press, we only have one television station in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, which is owned by the ZANU-PF government. And we are the only country outside a war zone in Africa that only has one television station. Rwanda had a genocide in 1994. Today, they have more than 16 television stations. That's how bad it is. I get arrested, and I know that they are arresting me because they want to instill the fear of God in me. And more importantly, in young journalists, to say, if we can do this to a journalist with international name recognition, what more about you? So freedom of press at the moment does not exist, especially when people like myself are being arrested for lies, for things that we didn't do, and laws that don't exist are being used. It's a tragic.
Is there a way out? I mean, you've been so resilient, you've persevered, you keep going at it, you keep trying to spread this message and reveal so many breaking stories when it comes to the conduct and the operations within the politics of Zimbabwe. Where's your glimmer of hope when it comes to press freedom and you know, media freedom and speech?
I hope that when my colleagues in Zimbabwe and media owners see the kind of journalism that is practiced by people like yourselves in South Africa, they will realize that there is no society which will be prosperous unless there is freedom of the press, unless there's a free media, because people need to get the right and correct information in order for them to make the right choices about their lives. And in order for them to prosper, they need to have the right information before they can interact and interface with public life. And, you know, I'll give you a good example of how it's important for us as journalists to expose corruption. Our school teachers are paid peanuts. 88 schools in Zimbabwe, the zero pass rate for their grade 7 primary examinations. That is unacceptable in any society like Zimbabwe, which takes pride in its education system, a foundation which was laid in 1980, but which has since been broken. So it's important for us to tell our stories. It's important for the government of Zimbabwe to understand that in order for it to be successful, it must allow free information and it must respect the constitution, which says that there is freedom of press, there's freedom of speech, and there's freedom for citizens to protest against their own government if they feel that things are going the wrong way.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, that was Hopewell Chin'ono, journalist in Zimbabwe, talking to us about how he has now released a song which talks to the serious issues of graft and corruption in Zimbabwe.